definitely. And frankly, like I, James S.A. Corey, I think was, and technically that's two dudes. One of the things I loved about their book series, and I think I've even mentioned it on here before, is that they managed to. They're the best I've ever seen that attacks macro politics for a book series. What I loved about those books is they've established like a UN type part of like the governmental system. You know, you consider like your capitalist, whatever, and then you have your like Russian style communist nations with the Martians. But then you have like the anarchist groups on the outside in the Belters, and you're seeing how like the interplay of all of these different political factions would work out like real problems, like you say, like people there's gonna if you have a big organization like that that has a vested interest in keeping people under their thumb, that there's a certain way they're going to act. And you know, I think that this science fiction realm is such a good way to play that out because you can start working on that problem at a galactic level. You know, and it's a problem that constantly comes up. One of my favorite TV shows of all time, no surprise, is Firefly. And what is Firefly about? It's about the central authorities trying to keep everyone kind of under their thumb. And not whether you agree with people or not everyone is going to go along with it or want to. And how does that play out in macro politics? So, you know, it's always fun to see the different types of people that have to interact in those worlds. And it gives you a lot of outs as to say, like, I don't necessarily need to be locked into my politics in this. I can kind of look at different peoples and how different characters and this is what they think. This is how they were born. How are they going to act in it? You know, Kamina Drummer versus James Holden have very different upbringings in The Expanse, and how they interrelate in that is going to be very different.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, science fiction always asks the question, what if? At the heart of every science fiction story, novel, novella is, you know, you can dig all the way down to what if, and there's something in there, you know, that is the answer to that question.
No, absolutely. And I guess that's to me. Like I'm a very hard sci-fi kind of guy. I like my Isaac Asimov, like where he's like in very specific kind of things. I never really gravitated towards the Star Wars stuff, which to me is just fantasy in space. Don't get me wrong, I like fantasy, and I don't necessarily think it's bad. It just never hits me as hard as like how strong that what if is in a good hard science fiction book. You know, what is it? Heinlein's another really good one, I think, for that. Or you got a very specific problem we're looking at here.
Oh, absolutely. Heinlein is. It's funny that you mentioned both Asimov and Heinlein. Asimov, my dad gave me the 3-book Foundation set when I was probably 8 years old. That's one of the, you know, first science fiction books that I had. And Heinlein has been one of my favorite authors forever.
Well, I like him because he changes up, like you were talking about. Like you have this universe and this world that you're writing these stories in, but you can play with the format that you're writing them in. And Heinlein was great at that.
He really was, and he made you believe in his worlds. You know, and it didn't take much. Here's a great example of how powerfully he could write to describe a world, to get you into his world. The door dilated. 3 words, and you have a setting in your head. You know a whole bunch of things about that world. You know it's futuristic. You know that they're still using doors, so it's still familiar. It's human, you know, because, again, you know, doors are a human thing. And it's just like, you know, it dilated, so, you know, different technologies instead of a door swinging open and shut. All of that, 3 words. 3 words. I mean, that, how, wow.
No, that's awesome. So, currently, what are you working on currently? What's the next thing people can expect from you?
So I have two projects going right now. The first one is another collection of stories set in the universe. That should be out by June. I don't have a hard date on that yet because there are still two stories that I'm writing. And the other one is the Tracking Tantor, the second book in the missions of the TFS Pike. That I'm halfway
Pike, huh?
through. Yep. I'm halfway through that, and that should be a summer release as well. Beyond that, I'll know when you know.
I'm curious. So, how often do you release books? I mean, it sounds like you are pretty prolific in how quickly you put them out. It doesn't sound like it's how long. How long have you been working as a writer? Obviously, you took 7 years off there, and you don't look like you're a terribly old guy in my world. Because I'd have to admit that I'm really old, and I'm not going to do that.
My wife always says I look a lot younger than I am. So I have been writing seriously for 3 years. I mean, that's when the Cassidy
So
Chronicle.
8 books in 3 years. That's yeah, you're prolific. You're clearly
Well,
putting
and
them
again, that
out.
doesn't, and that doesn't count the anthologies. AC and I put out an anthology last fall, and we have, like I said, the other one coming out in about a month. How long it takes, it really depends on what other projects are going on and how busy I am with conventions and and things like that. Summertime is a very busy time for me because where I live in southern Colorado, the closest bookstore is 90 miles away, or the closest new bookstore is 90 miles away. So every weekend, I'm down at our local farmers market, and connecting with the local community and talking to them about books and getting them hooked on science fiction.